Joanne Fluke writes a series of books about a character named Hannah Swenson, a baker who solves crimes in her free time. The author, who loves baking herself, is widely known for her incorporation of actual recipes into her books. Joanne recently sat down with My Library DV to tell us all about Hannah Swenson and how she came to be.
Hannah Swenson is a little bit over 30-year-old redhead who owns a bakery and coffee shop in Lake Eden, Minnesota, and that's fictional, unfortunately, because I would love to live there. And she's a very funny lady, and she bakes like a dream. People tell Hannah things, so she's kind of her ears to the ground in the cookie shop. I should tell you about the invisible waitress trick. That's what Hannah uses. If you're in a restaurant, next time you're in a restaurant, you notice when the waitress comes around and fills your coffee cup, you probably don't stop talking. You may smile and nod, but you probably go right on with your conversation if you're having a conversation with someone else. No matter how personal it is, it's like the waitress does not exist. The coffee gets filled, and you're telling your friend all about something that's extremely personal. And this is what happens to Hannah. She's the invisible waitress. So she hears a lot of things. She can solve crimes this way.
The author fondly recalls her earliest experiences with reading and writing.
I started writing very early. I used to write little things for myself. I never really kept a diary, but I used to write stories. And then when I got in school, my 8th grade literature teacher said, every Friday we are going to write a story. And it's going to take you 2 sheets of paper. And so every Friday he would put like 4 or 5 titles on the board, and he'd say, I want you to write about one of these. It can be fiction, it can be nonfiction, it can be an article, I don't care what, but I just want you to fill up the pages. And the rest of the class would go, ooh, and I would go, oh, good. And that's when I knew I probably wanted to be a writer. I used to try writing everything. I tried writing science fiction, I tried writing romance. I mean, what does a 6-year-old kid know about romance? But I thought I could do it. I tried almost every genre. And now I write mysteries, and I'm so happy with it.
Joanne tells us the story of how her career in the mystery genre started off.
I decided to do mysteries because, well, it was an accident. This is weird. I always wanted to write a cookbook because my family has always baked and cooked for various things. And we're sort of seat-of-the-pants cooks. So, you know, all the recipes were written down on little tiny scraps of paper and in boxes, shoe boxes. And I wanted to write a cookbook. And then I thought, well, I can't just write a cookbook, so I want to put something on the facing page, like a little story about small-town Minnesota life. And so I prepared a proposal, and I tried to sell that cookbook. And it wouldn't sell. I mean, I had no franchise for this. I didn't own a restaurant. I had never gone to cooking school. And so, of course, it was rejected. And then my editor at Kensington said, how about doing a mystery for us? And I said, can it have recipes? And he said, yeah. So that's how Hannah was born.
Joanne was more than enthusiastic about getting the chance to include her recipes in her work, because baking had meant so much to her and her family ever since her childhood in Minnesota.
My mom, my dad, and my grandmother, and I all lived in the same house. And my grandmother was a baker. And so she had all these recipes, but they weren't written down. And she used to bake every morning in the winter. It was absolutely wonderful because I woke up to the smell of cinnamon and vanilla and chocolate. And my mom never had to worry about me getting up in time for school because I was racing down the stairs to see what Gammy had baked.
Joanne tells us about some of the recipes she has used over the years.
I should say that my favorite recipe is chocolate chip crunch cookies, because that really is how I got started. And it really was an accident when I came up with it. That's my recipe. When I came up with those cookies, because I was going to make chocolate chip oatmeal cookies, and I ran out of oatmeal. But there was a box of cornflakes, and I thought, well, why not? I've got the dough mixed up, so I substituted cornflakes. And my son came over to go somewhere with my husband and said, oh, these are wonderful cookies. I love these cookies. I thought, oh, I have a hit. These are blonde brownies. Blonde brownies are the last recipe in key lime pie murder. And they're absolutely delicious. I gotta say that, even though I made them, you know, sometimes I'm bragging, but they are so good. They are, there's coconut and there's white chocolate, and they're just wonderful.
Perhaps the only thing Joanne likes doing as much as baking is writing. Interestingly, both activities remind her of her family and her childhood.
The greatest thing about writing are the characters and going home again. I no longer live in Minnesota. I grew up in small town Minnesota, a town of 217. The name of it was Swanville, Minnesota, counting the dogs and cats, I think. But Swanville, I haven't been back there in a long time. And this is like going home again. When I sit down and I start writing about Lake Eden, Minnesota, and Hannah, and her sisters, and our mom, and all the people in town, it's like I am going back home. And so it's a visit for me. It's a pleasure.
Joanne doesn't mind admitting that she has someone helping her with her writing.
My husband worked in television for years. He's retired now, but this is so good. I'm so lucky. I am married to a story editor who did detective shows. So he's wonderful. He catches the holes in my plots. And as a matter of fact, we plot together a lot of times. And generally the way that we start is we say, okay, what is the crime going to be? How is the murder going to take place? And then we decide who the victim is going to be. And then we come up with all sorts of reasons why this person could have been killed. Now, my husband and I used to do this. We used to go out to restaurants. We would have a nice dinner, and then we would have coffee afterwards, and then we would start discussing the new book, whichever one it was. And our question was always, who are we going to kill next? Well, when we noticed we weren't getting any service, because you don't say, who are we going to kill next in a restaurant? No, we don't do that. Now we do it at home.
Once Joanne has come up with a plot line, turning it into a novel is usually, no pun intended, a piece of cake for her.
Everything is character-driven. Hannah has always been just extremely real to me, so I know what she's going to say. So a lot of times the writing is almost automatic. Let me tell you, sometimes I will outline. I outline before I write. And if I have Hannah or any of the other characters doing something that's out of character for them, I can't write it. It comes across wrong. Sometimes I have to change the outline because Hannah won't do it. Hannah has a mind of her own, you know. As a matter of fact, I can be in the grocery store and I could look for some ingredient and there can be a choice. For instance, should I get this brand of white chocolate or that brand of white chocolate? And Hannah, I will turn around to ask Hannah. And of course she's not there. You know, this makes me certifiable, but of course she's not there. But she is that real that I sometimes feel as if she's standing right behind me.
It seems that Joanne feels almost as close to her readers as she does to Hannah.
I get a lot of email from fans. And what amazes me about my fans are, they are all so nice. It's incredible. These are nice people. And the age group is so varied. I mean, I have an 11-year-old that wrote to me like a couple days ago and said, I made your chocolate chip crunch cookies for my mom. And I'm thinking, isn't that nice? You know, I mean, she learned how to bake from my books. That's great. And what I love is sometimes the generations pass the books down. And I love that when, you know, grandma reads and then says to the daughter, I'm through, you can read. And then the daughter says, oh, I'm going to give it to my daughter to read. You know, that makes me feel good.